Welcome to another edition of Letters to Mahakala. This edition is entitled Grandmaster Psychosis. Martial arts, the type with weird uniforms and pricey membership rates, not the type with guns and tanks, has always had its share of problems. One of the famous problems has to be the Grandmaster problem. This is for practitioners especially, who sell themselves out to be some unbeatable prophet of the way. Here I think of Bruce Lee, the actor, when I think of this example. Now, the first deadly sin in martial arts should be to name yourself Grandmaster. Of course, when in reality, you probably only earned this by giving it to yourself. However, there are some who historically have earned it from their Sifu or even a group of Sifus. I acknowledge that. But at least in America, the Grandmaster title is like the Ring of Power from Lord of the Rings. It's too much for any man or woman to carry. The title corrupts, absolutely. An example of this is a guy I'll just call Marty. Marty has a few Grandmaster titles in different martial arts. His students are atrocious. The katas look like crap. And they give a bad name for the term martial arts. Now, part of the problem with Marty and his students is a lack of presence. You know, the authentic presence in the moment, the Zen experience. Second, since Marty doesn't really know how to apply power from his Danshin into his strikes, his students don't know it either. This is a major problem that follows from katas into free sparring. Grandmasters, therefore, seem like they are bad for business. They are puffed up versions of ourselves, selves that have forgotten the goodness of hard training. For example, I'm reminded of a Krav Maga master who did very little during a seminar, very little but talk. His ego is extended beyond belief. In a similar fashion, I endured a bit of let me pronounce that again, Chuen training during a seminar. Besides being a hard name to pronounce, it was also a difficult sort of, layout to get my head around. However, the head Sifu dressed like a Zen master in the very beginning of the seminar. He even had the alms bow at his side. It just screamed fake to me. It began a discussion of what kind of spirit does it take to do well in martial training. He waited, and then I answered in Zen fashion, Gods! Hilik Twin doesn't understand Zen dialogue, apparently. I was encouraged to shut the hell up on the second utterance and to let somebody else try, but nobody did. You see, today's martial arts students are like Marty in a way. They hate to answer the hard question. True, Marty would run his mouth about the pseudo history of his style. Shaolin this, Shaolin that. In truth, Marty will finally say, my heart is made up of different styles. You want karate? You got it. You want kung fu? Boom. You want judo? It's all yours for the taking. And that's the problem with Marty. He has no idea what it means to be a pure karateka, nor being a purebred kung fu practitioner. And let's be honest, Marty, you got your judo from Bruce Tegner. I recently talked to a retired MMA guy who confessed that he ended his career accidentally by damaging his fist on the skull of a competitor. I can't throw, or it puffs up like a cantaloupe, he said. I see the loss in his eyes, partly doused with a bit of confusion. I wanted to tell him about other ways of practice, but his next confession silenced me. I wish I had some formal martial arts training in my background. And that's the thing, isn't it? We're all jazz players until we finally realize there's a structure to it. And then the fog partly melts. MMA is a function of raw hooliganism, something hacked by hackers, something that only partially functions inside a caged area, an area that reinforces MMA movement rates in area of attack zones. Take, for example, the death of Tyler East in Los Lunas, New Mexico. East retrieved a gun during a domestic dispute with his girlfriend. He shot her, and in turn, he also was shot by a local resident. The bullet killed East, but his girlfriend survived. So what do we have here? Check out what celebrated writer Chris Hedges has to say about the mindset of such a person. You get people to speak in the language of violence and then to carry out acts of indiscriminate violence. To seal the deal, there's a short tale of Jamshid, a 25-year-old MMA fighter from Great Britain. His story is swift and brutal and very telling to the MMA superiority crowd. As it is told, Jamshid attempted to sneak into a club, at which point he was beat, at which point a melee began. In that melee, Jamshid was beaten by bats, stabbed, and finally dumped into the gutter. There was no sight of a round being won, just the sound of unfortunate melee. You see, when you speak the language of violence, the meme is activated in your brain. And from there, random experience or random poke in the cage brings it about. The problem with Jamshid is that he engaged with that language outside the cage, found his one-on-one game had changed to a mixed bouncer brigade. And that's the last thing he experienced. My wager is hardly anyone will care about the deaths of Jamshid or Tyler. The winds of cage wars blow cash into the mix. And since large sums of cash is often blamed for the erosion of the human spirit, whether that be human spirit of a grandmaster or a hot-headed, ego-bloated MMA fighter, we might all well do with a few hours of meditation per week. Learn how to empty the memes in our head. Learn how to sit down and shut the hell up.